Hello guys. Welcome to Pika Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Ash was the chosen one of Lugia and was destined to marry all legendary Pokegirls. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The seas witnessed the salt in the air tasted different tonight. It was heavier, metallic, like blood dissolved in brine. Ash Ketchum sat on the edge of a crumbling terracotta roof, his legs dangling over the narrow, labyrinthine canals of Alto Mare. At 19, the boy who had once sprinted headlong into danger with a grin plastered on his face was gone. In his place sat a young man who had learned the hard way that courage without calculation was just a eulogy waiting to be written. He took a slow sip from a tin cup of bitter black coffee, his eyes scanning the waterways below. The city was asleep, bathed in the soft, bioluminescent glow of the lanterns lining the canals, but the silence was a lie. "You feel it too, don't you?" Ash murmured. On his shoulder, Pikachu didn't chirp. The electric mouse, scarred over one eye from the Kalos crisis, simply stiffened, his ears swiveling toward the eastern district. The yellow fur along his spine stood on end, sparking with tiny, silent arcs of blue electricity. "Something is bleeding," the sensation whispered in Ash's mind. It wasn't a thought. It was a frequency, a resonant hum that vibrated in the marrow of his bones. Since the incident at the Orange Islands years ago, the connection to the ocean had been a dormant ghost in his psyche. Tonight, however, the ghost was screaming. Ash set the cup down. He reached behind him, his fingers closing around the hilt of a long, wrapped bundle strapped to his back. He didn't draw it yet, but the weight was comforting. "Move," Ash said softly. He didn't wait for a response. He dropped from the roof, falling 3 stories in a controlled plummet. Wind rushed past his ears, and just before impact, a pulse of blue aura flared around his boots, cushioning the landing on the cobblestones with a dull thud. Pikachu was already running, a yellow blur darting into the shadows of the alleyway. Ash followed, his stride long and predatory. The scream of the ocean was getting louder. The eastern district of Alto Mare was usually reserved for the old shrines, a place of mossy stone and forgotten prayers. Now, it was a kill zone. Ash pressed his back against a damp wall, peering around the corner. The plaza ahead was illuminated not by lanterns, but by the harsh, sterile white beams of floodlights mounted on hovering drones. In the center of the plaza, surrounded by the wreckage of a stone fountain, a girl was fighting for her life. She moved with a grace that defied physics, her body bending like water, dodging blasts of plasma fire. She wore a tattered white dress that clung to her wet skin, her red hair matted with sweat and grime. But it was the way she moved, levitating inches off the ground, her eyes glowing with a desperate, psychic violet light, that betrayed her nature. "Target locked," a mechanical voice boomed from one of the armored figures encircling her. There were 6 of them. They wore matte black combat armor with no insignia, their faces hidden behind featureless iron masks. They wielded rifles that didn't fire bullets, but suppression nets of red energy designed to sever the connection between a Pokémon and its power. The sovereignty of iron. Ash's jaw tightened. Rumors of a paramilitary faction hunting legendaries had been circulating in the underground for months. He hadn't expected them to be this bold. The girl raised a hand, creating a shimmering barrier of psychic glass, but a sniper shot from the rooftops shattered it. She cried out, clutching her side. Red blood, human blood, seeped through her fingers. "Secure the asset," the leader commanded. "If she resists, cut her wings." Ash felt a spike of cold rage punch through his chest. It wasn't just anger, it was a territorial instinct, ancient and overwhelming. He stepped out of the shadows. "I'd advise against that," Ash said. His voice was low, carrying easily over the hum of the drones. The squad leader turned, leveling his rifle. "Civilian. Retreat or be neutralized." Ash kept walking. He didn't rush. He didn't summon a Pokeball. "You're in my way." "Fire," the leader said, bored. 3 rifles discharged. Streams of red suppression energy shrieked toward Ash. He didn't dodge. "Pikachu." It was a whisper, but it cracked like a whip. A bolt of lightning, thick as a tree trunk, descended from the clear night sky. It didn't just strike. It obliterated the space between Ash and the gunman. The cobblestones exploded, sending shrapnel hissing through the air. The shockwave knocked two of the soldiers off their feet. Ash surged through the smoke. He was fast, faster than a human had any right to be. He closed the distance to the nearest soldier, ducking under a rifle butt swing. Ash drove his palm into the soldier's solar plexus, channeling a concentrated burst of aura. The armor crumpled like tin foil, and the man went flying back into a stone pillar, unconscious before he hit the ground. Contact. The leader screamed. He's an aura guardian. Switch to kinetic rounds. Ash didn't stop. He slid across the wet stones, grabbing a discarded suppression rifle and tossing it into the canal. He wasn't trying to win a Pokemon battle. He was dismantling a military unit. Pikachu was a blur of motion, bouncing off the walls, using Iron Tail to slice through the drone's rotors. Metal rained down around them. Ash reached the center of the plaza. He dropped to one knee beside the girl, grabbing her shoulder to steady her. She flinched, her eyes wide and terrified, swirling with psychic panic. "Bianca," Ash said, his voice softening, "look at me." Her eyes focused. The violet glow faded, revealing warm amber irises. Recognition dawned, slow and painful. "Ash," she breathed, her voice sounding like wind chimes in a storm. You look so old." "Yeah, well, it's been a long road," Ash said, glancing at the wound on her side. "It was deep. Can you move?" "They have inhibitors," she gasped, nodding toward the perimeter. I can't shift back. I'm stuck in this form." Latias. The Eon Pokemon, trapped in human flesh, bleeding out on cold stone. "We're leaving," Ash said. He scooped her up, surprised by how light she was. She weighed no more than a bird. "Target acquired," the leader's voice cut through the smoke. "Deploy the silencer." A heavy, oscillating thrum filled the air. Ash felt his stomach drop. The blue sparks on Pikachu's cheeks died out. The aura in Ash's veins turned sluggish, like water freezing to ice. A massive, spider-like tank dragged itself onto the roof overlooking the plaza. Its central cannon glowed with a sickly, void-black energy. "Run," Bianca whispered, clutching Ash's jacket. "Ash, please. You can't fight that. It eats energy. It will eat your soul." Ash looked at the exits. Blocked. He looked at Pikachu. The mouse was panting, unable to spark. He looked at the girl in his arms, who was shivering violently as the cold of the grave crept into her. He realized, with a terrifying clarity, that strategy wouldn't save them. Tactics wouldn't save them. He needed power. Not the power of a trainer, but the power of a king. Ash set Bianca down gently behind the remains of the fountain. He reached over his shoulder and unclasped the bundle on his back. The cloth fell away, revealing a weapon that seemed to drink the moonlight. It was a sword, but not of steel. It was forged from a single, massive silver wing, sharpened to a molecular edge, the hilt wrapped in blue leather. A gift from a storm he had survived years ago. "Ash, no." Bianca wept. Ash stood up, facing the tank. He closed his eyes. "Lugia," he projected the thought, screaming it into the mental void. "If you're listening, I'm cashing in the favor." The response was immediate. It didn't come from the sky. It came from the girl. Bianca gasped, her back arching. A blinding white light erupted from her chest, pulsing in rhythm with Ash's heartbeat. The covenant must be sealed. The voice wasn't Bianca's. It was vast, ancient, and layered with the pressure of the deep ocean. Ash turned back to her. The light from her chest was reaching out, tendrils of silver mist seeking an anchor. "Ash," Bianca said, her voice dual-layered now, half human, half dragon. "I cannot hold the form. I am dying. The only way to save the essence is to bind it." "Bind it to what?" Ash demanded, deflection the tank's first kinetic round with the flat of his silver blade. The impact jarred his teeth, sliding him back 2 feet. "To you," she cried. "The soul bond. The silver covenant. You become the vessel. My power becomes yours, and my life becomes your burden. And if I'm not strong enough, then we both burn." The spider tank on the roof charged its main cannon. The void light turned purple. It was going to level the entire city block. Ash looked at the enemy. He looked at the terrified, dying demigod. He didn't hesitate. He never did. Ash dropped the sword and fell to his knees, grabbing Bianca's face in his hands. "Do it." Bianca surged forward, pressing her forehead against his. It wasn't a kiss, it was a collision. The world turned white. The sensation was agony. It felt like drowning. It felt like freezing. It felt like falling from the stratosphere without a parachute. Ash felt his own soul being pried open with a crowbar, making room for something massive and infinite. Memories that weren't his flooded his mind. Soaring through clouds at Mach 4, the taste of high-altitude ozone, the crushing loneliness of immortality, the warmth of a secret garden. He felt Latias's fear. He felt her admiration for him, preserved in amber since that day in the garden years ago. He felt her desperate need to be protected, and her fierce desire to protect in return. I accept you, Ash thought, forcing his will to wrap around the storm inside him. I am the shore. You are the tide. Come home. The agony snapped into clarity. The white light imploded, sucking back into Ash's chest. Silence returned to the plaza. The squad leader on the roof laughed nervously. Did we get them? Reading 0 thermal signatures. Down in the smoke, 2 eyes opened. They were glowing a luminous, psychic violet. Ash stood up. He wasn't holding Bianca anymore. She was gone, or rather, she was everywhere. Her physical form had dissolved into a shimmering aura that coated Ash like a second skin, a spectral projection of Latias floating ethereally behind his shoulders like a guardian angel. Ash picked up his sword. It felt light as a feather. He looked up at the tank. The world seemed to be moving in slow motion. He could see the electrical currents in the tank's wiring. He could feel the fear spiking in the soldiers' hearts. System error. The tank pilot screamed. Energy spike detected. It's off the charts. It's reading as a legendary class entity. Ash flexed his hand. A sphere of compressed mist and psychic energy formed in his palm. Mist ball, Ash whispered. He didn't throw it. He simply willed it to be there. The sphere vanished and reappeared instantly inside the barrel of the tank's cannon. The explosion was silent at first, a vacuum of imploding gravity, before the shockwave roared outward, shattering every window in the district. The tank was torn apart, metal twisting like wet clay. The soldiers were blown backward, their armor locking up as the psychic wave fried their electronics. Ash stood amidst the falling debris, untouched. The spectral form of Latias faded, coalescing back into the physical form of Bianca, who collapsed into his arms, unconscious but breathing. Her wound was gone, sealed by the bonding energy. The silence that followed was heavy. Pikachu limped over, sniffing Ash's boot. Ash knelt, stroking the Pokemon's ears. I'm okay, buddy, Ash said. His voice sounded different, richer, carrying a harmonic undertone. We're okay. He looked at his reflection in a puddle of water. A silver marking, shaped like a stylized wing, had appeared on his left cheekbone, glowing faintly before fading into his skin. He could feel her. Bianca. She was asleep in his arms, but he could feel her dreams. She was safe. She was bound to him. A slow clapping echoed from the alleyway. Ash spun, the sword rising instinctively. A man stepped into the light. He was tall, wearing a pristine white military coat with gold epaulettes. His face was handsome, sharp-angled, and utterly cold. He held a cane topped with a phoenix feather. Bravo, the man said smoothly. I was told the Chosen of Lugia was a myth, a fairy tale for children. Ash tightened his grip on Bianca. Who are you? The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I am Valerius, High Commander of the Sovereignty. He gestured to the burning wreckage of his tank with indifference. You've cost me a great deal of money tonight, Mr. Ketchum. But the data. Oh, the data is priceless. If you come closer, Ash warned, the violet aura flaring around him again, I will dismantle you. I believe you would, Valerius nodded. Or rather, she would. You are merely the battery, aren't you? A human fuse for a divine weapon. Valerius tapped his cane on the stones. Behind him, shadows lengthened, forming the silhouettes of 3 Entei-class mechanical beasts. This was just a field test, Valerius said, turning to leave. Enjoy your honeymoon, Ash. The Covenant has begun. But remember, gods are heavy things to carry. Eventually, your back will break. He snapped his fingers, and a teleportation field engulfed him and his machines. In a blink, they were gone. Ash stood alone in the ruins of the plaza. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a bone-deep exhaustion in its wake. He looked down at Bianca. She stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. Ash? She whispered. I'm here, he said. We did it? We survived, Ash corrected. He looked out toward the ocean. The song was quieter now, but the message had changed. It wasn't a warning anymore. It was a summons. Rest, Bianca, Ash said, lifting her up. We have a long way to go. Where? She murmured, resting her head against his chest, right over his heart where their bond now pulsed. Ash looked north, toward the icy peaks of the Seafoam Islands. To find the others, Ash said grimly, before he does. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The frost thrown the cold in the Seafoam Islands was not a weather pattern, it was a verdict. It didn't just sit on the skin, it burrowed through the layers of thermal gear, seeking the warmth of the blood like a starving parasite. The wind howling through the jagged, crystalline spires sounded less like a gale and more like 1,000 glass flutes shattering in unison. Ash Ketchum adjusted the collar of his heavy parka, his boots crunching on the permafrost. Beside him, Bianca walked with her arms wrapped around herself. She wasn't wearing winter gear. She didn't need to. As a dragon of the Eon line, her internal temperature ran furnace hot, but she was shivering for a different reason. It's so loud here, her voice echoed in Ash's mind. It was a sensation of vertigo, her thoughts bleeding into his. The ice, it remembers everything. Focus on my heartbeat, Ash projected back, a trick he had learned in the last 48 hours. Use it as an anchor. He felt her gratitude wash over him like warm water. Since the bonding in Alto Mare, the boundaries between them had eroded. Ash now possessed reflexes that were slightly too fast, and his peripheral vision spanned nearly 180 degrees. But the cost was the noise. He was constantly aware of her anxiety, her awe, and the terrifying raw power bubbling just beneath her human skin. We're being watched, Pikachu chattered, his breath puffing out in tiny white clouds. He was riding inside Ash's hood, seeking warmth. I know, Ash murmured. He kept his hand near the hilt of the silver-winged sword, since we made landfall. They stood at the entrance to the Great Hall, a massive cavern mouth framed by icicles the size of cathedral pillars. The darkness inside was absolute, save for the faint, rhythmic pulsing of blue light deep within. She won't be happy to see us, Bianca whispered aloud, her voice brittle. Articuno, Aurora, she is the strict mother of the Triad. She views the Covenant as a cage. Then we break the lock, Ash said. He stepped into the dark. The throne room of the North was a masterpiece of natural architecture. The floor was a frozen lake, polished to a mirror sheen, reflecting the stalactites above. At the far end, atop a dais carved from a single block of blue diamond, sat a woman. She was terrifyingly beautiful. Her skin was the color of moonlight on snow, her hair a cascading waterfall of pale blue that seemed to drift in a non-existent breeze. She wore a gown of woven frost that shimmered with every breath. Her eyes were faceted, like gemstones, and utterly devoid of warmth. This was Aurora, the avatar of the freeze. Flanking her were two massive glalie, their shells scarred from centuries of territorial disputes. They rumbled as Ash approached, a sound like tectonic plates shifting. A hybrid, Aurora's voice was not spoken, it resonated from the ice walls, surrounding them, and a traitor. Bianca flinched, stepping behind Ash. Ash stopped in the center of the room. He didn't bow, he didn't kneel. He planted his boots firmly on the ice, the metal cleats biting in. I am Ash Ketchum, he announced, his voice steady. Bearer of the Silver Wing. I come to speak of the sovereignty. Aurora stood slowly. She was tall, looming over them from the dais. I know who you are, boy. I can smell the scent of my sister on you. She narrowed her eyes at Bianca. You wear his soul like a coat, Latius. Have you no pride? To bind yourself to a mortal is to accept mortality. You will wither. You will rot. I chose life, Bianca snapped, finding a sudden spark of courage. Better to wither than to be hunted to extinction. Extinction? Aurora laughed, a sharp, cracking sound. I am the winter. Winters do not die, they only wait. She descended the stairs, floating an inch above the ice. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees in a second. Ash's breath began to freeze on his lips. The sovereignty has developed weapons that can strip you of your avatar state, Ash said, cutting through her posturing. They almost killed Bianca. They have a way to shackle Ho-Oh. If you stay here alone, you will fall. Aurora stopped 3 feet from him. The cold radiating offer was painful, stinging Ash's exposed face. Let them come, she sneered. I have frozen armies before. I have buried empires in snow. What is one human boy with a sword and a traitorous dragon going to do for me? I offer an alliance, Ash said. The Covenant. The Covenant is a marriage of souls, Aurora scoffed. It requires trust. It requires submission. I will not submit to a creature whose lifespan is a blink of my eye. She raised a hand. The moisture in the air condensed instantly into a dozen razor-sharp spears of ice, hovering around Ash's throat. Leave, Aurora commanded, or become part of the architecture. Ash didn't flinch. His eyes locked onto hers. You're afraid. The ice spears trembled. What did you say? You're isolated. You can feel the currents shifting just like we can. You know Valerius is coming, and you know you can't beat him alone. But your pride is louder than your survival instinct. Aurora's face twisted in fury. Insolent, the ceiling exploded. There was no warning. One moment the cavern was silent, the next, the roof was disintegrating in a shower of rock and ice. A cylinder of black metal slammed into the frozen lake floor, shattering the surface and sending a shockwave of steam and debris outward. Ash shielded his face, digging his heels in as the floor rocked. From the steam, a figure emerged. It wasn't a tank this time. It was a man in a sleek, aerodynamic suit of gray armor, equipped with thermal thrusters on the back. He held a weapon that looked like a tuning fork, humming with a subsonic frequency that made Ash's teeth ache. Target identified. Articuno, a digitized voice spoke from the helmet, initiating thermal cascade. Who dares? Aurora shrieked. She thrust her hands forward. A blizzard erupted from her palms, sheer cold, a wave of absolute zero designed to stop atoms from moving. The assassin didn't dodge, he aimed the tuning fork. Thrum. A beam of distorted sound waves hit the blizzard. It didn't melt the ice. It shattered the molecular bonds holding the attack together. The cold wave dissipated into harmless mist. Aurora stumbled back, eyes wide. Impossible. Sonic destabilization, Ash yelled, drawing the silver-winged sword. He's using sound to break the ice crystals. Aurora, your attacks won't work. The assassin turned his helmet toward Aurora. Deployment of God-Slayer rounds authorized. He fired a projectile from a wrist-mounted launcher. It wasn't a bullet. It was a capsule of superheated plasma. It moved too fast for the shocked Aurora. Move, Ash roared. He didn't think. He didn't calculate. He simply acted. Ash tackled Aurora, slamming into her waist and driving her sideways just as the capsule detonated where she had been standing. The heat was instantaneous and blinding. The ice dais vaporized into steam. They rolled across the slick floor. Ash ended up on top, shielding her body with his own. He felt the heat sear the back of his coat, singing the leather. Aurora stared up at him, her expression frozen in shock. A human was touching her. A human was burning for her. Get off me, she hissed, shoving him away with surprising strength. Ash rolled to his feet, ignoring the stinging burn on his shoulder. Bianca, flank right. Pikachu, disrupt his guidance system. On it, Bianca yelled. Her form blurred, shifting partially, her arms elongated into draconic wings, and she took to the air, moving at supersonic speeds around the cavern to draw the assassin's fire. Pikachu darted across the broken ice, a zigzagging bolt of yellow. The assassin. Ash recognized the insignia now. The Iron Sovereignty's Ghost Division tracked Bianca. Secondary target acquired. Latius. Engaging. He aimed the sonic cannon at the flying girl. No you don't, Ash growled. He sprinted across the ice. The silver-winged sword pulsed in his hand, reacting to his rage. The blade glowed with a faint blue aura. Ash leapt, using a pillar of ice as a springboard. He closed the distance to the assassin in 2 seconds. The assassin turned, surprised by the human's speed. He raised the wrist launcher. Ash swung the sword. He didn't aim for the man. He aimed for the weapon. Clang. The silver blade, harder than diamond, sheared through the barrel of the sonic cannon. Sparks flew. The assassin backhanded Ash with a gauntleted fist, sending him skidding back across the ice. Ash tasted blood. He grinned. Your toy is broken. The assassin looked at the severed weapon, then at Ash. He dropped the broken cannon and drew a serrated thermal knife. Then I will carve the divinity out of you manually. Aurora! Ash yelled, not looking back. Hit him now, while his frequency shield is down. Aurora stood amidst the wreckage of her throne. She looked at the assassin, then at the boy wiping blood from his lip. For centuries, she had watched humans take. They took land, they took resources, they took lives. She had never seen one give. Something inside her cold, crystalline heart cracked. It wasn't a thaw, it was an avalanche. Kneel, Aurora whispered. She didn't cast a spell, she became the spell. Her eyes turned entirely white. The temperature in the room dropped to a point where physics began to weep. The steam in the air didn't just freeze, it solidified into diamond-hard needles. Blizzard. The air screamed. A vortex of white fury engulfed the assassin. Without his sonic disruptor, he was vulnerable. His thermal armor flared, trying to compensate, but the cold was metaphysical. It bypassed his technology and attacked his very presence. The assassin's thermal knife flickered and died. His thrusters jammed. He was encased, layer by layer, in a tomb of ice. System, failing, the voice crackled. With a final, dismissive wave of her hand, Aurora slammed the assassin into the far wall, burying him under tons of collapsing ice and rock. Silence returned to the cavern. Ash sheathed his sword. His breathing was ragged. The burn on his back was throbbing, and his adrenaline was crashing. Bianca landed softly beside him, checking him for injuries immediately. Ash, you're back. I'm fine, he wheezed. Just singed. Footsteps approached. Not the heavy crunch of boots, but the soft, regal tap of heels. Ash looked up. Aurora stood before him. She looked different. The haughty imperiousness was gone, replaced by a calculating, intense curiosity. She looked at the scorch marks on his coat. You shielded me, she stated. It wasn't a question. Why? Because that's the job, Ash said, straightening up. We protect the world. That includes you. You are a fool, Aurora said softly. She reached out, her cold fingers touching the burn on his shoulder. A soothing, icy numbness spread through the wound, dulling the pain instantly. A brave, idiotic, short-lived fool. She looked into his eyes. Deep within the facets of her gaze, Ash saw the lonely eternity she had endured. He saw the fear she had hidden behind her pride. The sovereignty will send more, Aurora said. Stronger ones. That man was merely a tester. I know, Ash said. That's why we need to be stronger. Aurora stepped closer. The air between them shimmered with potential energy. The covenant, she murmured. It is a binding of fate. If I give you my power, I give you my sovereignty. I become yours, in a way. And I become yours, Ash replied. I become your shield, your sword, your anchor. Aurora looked at Bianca. You trust him this much, sister? Bianca nodded, her eyes fierce. With my soul. Aurora turned back to Ash. A rare, faint smile touched her pale lips. It was terrifying and beautiful. Very well, she whispered. I will not be hunted like a common beast. If war is coming, then I shall have a general. She placed her hands on his chest. Her skin was freezing, burning cold even through his clothes. I, Aurora, aspect of the north wind, offer the covenant of ice. I, Ash Ketchum, accept the burden, he recited, the words coming instinctively. She leaned in, her lips brushing his ear. Then freeze with me. She kissed him. It was like inhaling a glacier. The bond slammed into place with the force of a physical blow. Ash gasped as his blood seemed to turn to slush, his heart rate slowing to a rhythmic, hibernating thud. His vision turned blue. He felt the solitude of the high peaks. He felt the clarity of the winter sky. He felt the ruthless efficiency of the storm. Unlike the chaotic, emotional bond with Bianca, this bond was structured. It was architectural. It built a fortress in his mind, a place of calm, cold logic. Ash's eyes snapped open. The pupils were no longer brown. One was the violet of the eon. The other was now a piercing, crystalline blue. A second mark appeared on his face, tracing along his right jawline, a stylized feather of ice. Aurora pulled back, breathless. She looked flushed, her eternal cold warmed by the influx of his chaotic, human life force. The link is forged, she said, her voice trembling slightly. She looked at her hands, flexing them. I feel strange, heavy. That's humanity, Ash said, his voice echoing with a new, dual harmonic, one melodic, one crisp and sharp. You'll get used to it. We cannot stay here, Bianca interjected, sensing the change in the atmosphere. The sovereignty knows this location now. They will bomb the islands. Ash nodded. The strategist in him, amplified by Aurora's cold logic, was already plotting. We move to the mainland, Ash said. Johto, the forests of Akrutik. Why there? Aurora asked, smoothing her gown. Because, Ash said, looking at the map on his device, where a red blinking light indicated a massive disturbance near the bell tower. Fire is the only thing that scares the ice, and we're going to need a lot of fire where we're going. He turned to the exit. The wind outside was still howling, but now, it sounded like a song of welcome. Let's go, the Silver King said. Behind him, two legendary aspects fell into step. The war for the world had just gained a second front. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. Embers of the Fallen. The forest of Akrutik was burning. It wasn't a natural fire. The flames that licked up the ancient cedar trees were not orange or red, but a sickly, chemical green. They didn't crackle. They hissed, devouring the wood with a quiet, acidic efficiency. Ash Ketchum stood on a ridge overlooking the valley. The smell of ozone and charred resin was thick in the air. It had been 3 days since they fled the Seafoam Islands, 3 days of moving through shadows, avoiding satellite sweeps and drone patrols. He looked different. The boyish roundness of his face had sharpened into the angles of a man who hadn't slept in a week. On his left cheek, the silver wing mark of Latias. On his right jaw, the crystalline feather of Articuno. Behind him, his camp was quiet. Bianca was sharpening a knife, a human weapon she had insisted on learning to use, claiming her psychic powers drew too much attention. Aurora sat cross-legged on a mossy rock, eyes closed, maintaining a low-level mist barrier to hide their thermal signatures. They're hurting us, Ash said quietly. Pikachu, perched on a tree branch, twitched his ears. Pika. Yeah, Ash agreed. Toward the burned tower. The symbolism wasn't lost on him. The burned tower was where the legendary beasts had been born from tragedy. It was a place of death and resurrection. It is a trap. Aurora's voice was cool, detached. She didn't open her eyes. The sovereignty does not start forest fires without purpose. They want to flush out the guardian. Suicune, Bianca murmured, testing the edge of her blade. Or, Kiyomi. She wanders these woods. She won't be wandering much longer if we don't intervene, Ash said. He turned, his coat swirling around his ankles. Valerius is here. I can feel him. It was true. Since the bond with Aurora, Ash's sensory perception had expanded. He could feel the cold spots in the world, places where nature was being perverted. And down in that valley, there was a void so deep it made his bones ache. The clearing near the ruins of the burned tower was a graveyard of history. Blackened stones jutted from the earth like broken teeth. In the center of the clearing stood a woman. She was tall, dressed in the tattered, flowing robes of a wandering Ronin. Her hair was a violent, vivid purple, tied back in a high ponytail that whipped in the wind. She carried a long, curved katana at her hip. Her posture was relaxed, almost bored, but her eyes scanned the tree line with the intensity of a predator. This was Kiyomi, the aspect of the north wind, the purifier. Surrounding her were 50 soldiers of the sovereignty, but these weren't the standard grunt units. These were the Iron Legion. They wore heavy, powered exoskeletons that whirred with hydraulic pressure. Each suit was equipped with a containment pack on the back, connected to their weapons by thick cables. And leading them was Valerius. He stood atop a hovering command platform, looking down at the Ronin with a sneer of distaste. Surrender, beast, Valerius projected, his voice amplified. There is no water here to save you, only fire. Kiyomi's hand rested lightly on her katana hilt. You trespass on sacred ground, Metalman. The spirits of this place are restless. Spirits are just data we haven't parsed yet, Valerius retorted. He gestured to his left. From the trees, a massive machine stepped out. It was quadrupedal, modeled after an Entei, but it was a mockery of the noble beast. Its body was jagged steel, its eyes burning red sensors. Smoke poured from its exhaust vents. A shackled legendary. Ash, watching from the high branches of a cedar tree 200 yards away, felt a wave of nausea. They built it, Ash realized with horror. They built an artificial Entei. It's running on pain, Bianca's voice whispered in his mind, trembling. They're using the blood of captured Pokemon to fuel the engine. Ash gripped the branch until the bark splintered. Get ready. Down in the clearing, the artificial Entei roared, a sound of grinding gears and synthesized rage. It charged. Kiyomi didn't flinch. As the metal beast lunged, she drew her blade. It was a blur of motion. A ribbon of water followed the steel, pressurized to cut through stone. SPLA Shing. The water blade struck the Entei bot's shoulder, but instead of slicing through, the water evaporated instantly upon contact. The machine's armor was superheated. Kiyomi was knocked backward by the sheer kinetic force of the collision. She skid across the dirt, her sandals digging trenches. Adaptable reactive armor, Valerius noted dryly. It learns, it counters. The soldiers opened fire. Not with lasers, but with canisters of chemical sludge, pollutants designed to weaken a water type's purity. Kiyomi moved like liquid, weaving through the barrage, but there were too many. A canister clipped her shoulder, exploding in a cloud of purple smog. She coughed, stumbling, her movements becoming sluggish. Purification failed, Valerius mocked, capture her. The soldiers advanced, electric nets powering up. Now, Ash yelled. The canopy above the soldiers exploded. Ash didn't drop down, he was thrown. Aurora, hovering in the mist above, used a gust of wind to launch him like a missile. He slammed into the center of the formation, the silver-winged sword driving into the earth. Thunderbolt. Pikachu, riding Ash's shoulder, discharged every volt of electricity he had stored. The current channeled through the silver sword and into the ground. The result was catastrophic for the Iron Legion. The wet earth, soaked from Kiyomi's water attacks, conducted the electricity perfectly. 20 exoskeletons short-circuited instantly, their pilots seizing as the hydraulics locked up. Ash ripped the sword free and spun. He wasn't fighting like a trainer, he was fighting like a warrior. He parried a soldier's stun baton, stepped inside his guard, and delivered an aura-enhanced palm strike to the chest plate, crumpling the steel. It's him, a soldier screamed, the silver bearer. Focus fire on the boy, Valerius commanded, his composure cracking for a second. Ash didn't stop moving. He was a whirlwind of silver and blue. He ducked under plasma fire, weaving through the chaos. Bianca dropped from the sky, her draconic strength allowing her to rip the containment pack off a soldier's back and hurl him into his comrades. Aurora descended, freezing the chemical sludge on the ground so the soldiers slipped and fell. Ash reached Kiyomi. She was on one knee, breathing heavily, the toxin working through her system. She looked up at him, her eyes narrowing. A human? She rasped. With the scent of my kin? Can you stand? Ash asked, offering a hand. Kiyomi slapped his hand away. I do not need saving by a mortal. Look around, lady. Ash shouted over the roar of the artificial Entei. You're losing. This isn't a duel of honor, it's an execution. The Entei bot charged again, ignoring the soldiers it trampled. It was focused solely on Ash. Ash turned to face it. He raised his sword. Kiyomi. Ash barked, his voice taking on that command tone that made even gods hesitate. If you want to purify this filth, you need a conduit. My sword is silver. It conducts aura, use it. Kiyomi stared at him. She saw the marks on his face, Latias, Articuno. She saw the resolve in his stance. He wasn't asking for her power to save himself, he was offering himself as a weapon for her. The Entei bot was 10 feet away. Kiyomi made her choice. She didn't take his hand, she grabbed the blade of his sword. Her hand didn't bleed. Instead, her body dissolved into a stream of rushing, crystalline water that spiraled up the steel, wrapping around Ash's arms, his chest, his soul. The Covenant of the Tide. Ash screamed as the water hit him. It wasn't cold like Aurora, it was heavy. It was the weight of the ocean, the crushing pressure of the deep. His vision turned a liquid blue. He felt the flow of every drop of sap in the trees, every heartbeat in the soldiers. Be the river, Kiyomi's voice whispered in his head, stern, disciplined, unyielding. Do not fight the current, guide it. Ash opened his eyes. They were glowing a fierce, deep azure. A third mark appeared on his forehead, a sapphire droplet. The Entei bot lunged, jaws gaping. Ash swung the sword. It wasn't just a metal blade anymore. It was a 60-foot whip of pressurized water, extended by the aura of Suicune. Crack. The water whip slammed into the machine. This time, the water didn't evaporate, it cut. The artificial Entei was bisected cleanly down the middle. The two halves slid apart, sparking and exploding. Ash stood panting, the water receding back into the form of the sword, which now shimmered with a permanent aqueous sheen. Kiyomi materialized beside him, reforming from the mist. She looked stunned. You. She breathed. You held the torrent. No human has ever held the torrent. Valerius, hovering safely out of range, looked down at the destruction of his prize creation. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with a fanatical hatred. You collect them like trophies, Valerius spat. Disgusting. You pollute their purity with your human filth. I don't collect them, Ash said, his voice amplifying naturally, echoing through the valley. I listen to them. That's the difference between a king and a slaver. Valerius sneered. This isn't over, Ketchum. The sovereignty has awakened something far older than these woods. Something that even your harem of monsters cannot defeat. He turned his platform and sped away, abandoning his disabled soldiers. Ash didn't pursue. He fell to his knees, the adrenaline crashing. Kiyomi stood over him. She looked at Bianca, then at Aurora. He is brash, Kiyomi observed. He is reckless, Aurora corrected, stepping forward to inspect Ash's injuries. He is kind, Bianca added softly. Kiyomi knelt down, looking Ash in the eye. The Ronin's harshness had softened, replaced by a warrior's respect. I have wandered for centuries seeking a master worthy of the North Wind, Kiyomi said. I found none. But perhaps a partner is what was required. She bowed her head, a formal, shallow nod. The covenant is sealed by combat, she declared. My blade is yours, Ash Ketchum, until the rivers run dry. Ash managed a weak grin. Welcome to the team, Kiyomi. He looked at his three companions. Latias, Articuno, Suicune. Air, ice, water. We're getting stronger, Ash said, struggling to his feet, but Valerius is right. He's building something. We need to find out what. I saw something, Kiyomi said, standing up, in the mind of the metal beast before you slew it. A coordinate. A city in the sky. Larus? Ash asked. No, Kiyomi shook her head. Higher. A station hidden in the stratosphere. They call it the Glass Garden. Ash's blood ran cold. Space. And, Kiyomi added, her voice dropping, I sensed a presence there. A psychic presence. One that is screaming in silence. Ash looked at Pikachu. The mouse's ears were flat against his head. Mewtwo, Ash whispered. The name hung in the air like a curse. If they have Mewtwo, Ash said, gripping his sword, then we aren't fighting a war anymore. We're fighting an apocalypse. He looked up at the smoke-choked sky. We're going up, Ash said, and we're going to bring it crashing down. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The Glass Garden. The stratosphere was silent. At 50,000 feet, the sky wasn't blue. It was a bruised purple, fading into the ink-black void of space. Below, the world was a curved tapestry of clouds and oceans, breathtakingly small. But Ash Ketchum wasn't looking down. He was looking ahead, through the reinforced canopy of the stolen Sovereignty transport shuttle. Floating in the darkness, untethered to the earth, was a monstrosity of glass and chrome. It looked like a jellyfish made of crystal. A massive central dome with trailing spires and docking bays hanging beneath it. The Glass Garden. Stealth systems are failing. Bianca's voice was tight. She was piloting the shuttle, her hands hovering over the holographic interface. The psychic pressure from that station is. It's immense. It's pushing against the hull like physical wind. Ash stood behind the pilot's seat. He was fully armored now, wearing a suit of modified tactical gear looted from the Sovereignty, reinforced with pieces of Articuno's ice weave to regulate his body temperature in the thin atmosphere. It's Mewtwo, Ash said. She knows we're here. Kiyomi asked from the co-pilot seat, her hand resting on her katana. The records say the clone is genderless. The records are wrong, Ash said. Or the Sovereignty changed her. It doesn't matter. We're going in. We have 3 minutes before their automated defenses liquefy us, Aurora noted from the back, checking her own tactical display. Strategy, Silver King? Ash looked at the looming station. We don't dock, Ash said. We breach. The plan was insane. But insanity was the only currency Ash had left. Bianca accelerated the shuttle to Mach 3, aiming directly for the station's botanical dome. At the last second, she engaged the emergency eject. The shuttle slammed into the force field of the station, exploding in a brilliant fireball. In the chaos of the explosion, 4 figures dropped through the fire. Aurora encased them in a sphere of diamond-hard ice. The sphere punched through the weakened force field and smashed through the glass roof of the dome. They crashed into a jungle. Ash rolled out of the shattered ice sphere, sword drawn. He expected alarms, he expected soldiers. Instead, he heard birdsong. He looked around. They were in a perfect, synthetic recreation of a tropical rainforest. Artificial sunlight streamed from panels above. A waterfall cascaded down a rock face into a crystal-clear pool. But something was wrong. The trees were too perfect. The leaves were identical. The birds singing in the trees weren't real. They were holographic projections flickering slightly. It's a cage, Kiyomi spat, slicing a vine that tried to curl around her leg. A pretty cage. Welcome, a voice echoed everywhere and nowhere. It was a voice of silk and steel. Cultured, polite, and radiating a terrifying boredom. From the waterfall, a figure floated down. She was humanoid, sleek, and pale. Her design was unmistakable. The long tail, the tube-like connection behind her neck, the 3-fingered hands. But unlike the Mewtwo Ash had met years ago, this one had distinctly feminine features, softer eyes, a slimmer build, and she wore a flowing gown of psychic energy that draped over her armor like skin. Guests, she mused, landing softly on the water's surface. Valerius usually only sends scientists. Or torture droids. You are distinct. Ash stepped forward, holstering his sword to show he wasn't attacking. Mewtwo. She tilted her head. Her eyes were a swirling nebula of violet and blue. You know my designation. How boring. I know you, Ash said. I know you were created to be a weapon. I know you hate it. Mewtwo laughed. It was a cold, tinkling sound. Hate? Hate implies I care. I have transcended hate. I simply exist. In this garden. Waiting for the heat death of the universe. You're trapped in a simulation. Bianca stepped forward, her own psychic aura flaring. This isn't real. None of this is real. Reality is subjective, Mewtwo countered. She waved a hand. The jungle vanished. Instantly, they were standing in a sterile white laboratory. The trees were stasis tubes filled with twisted, failed clones. The waterfall was a disposal chute for biological waste. Ash gagged at the smell of formaldehyde and rot. This is reality, Mewtwo said, her voice devoid of emotion. Do you prefer the garden? I do. She waved her hand again, and the jungle returned. Valerius keeps me here, she explained casually. He feeds me data. He asks me to solve tactical simulations. In exchange, he gives me this paradise. It is a transactional relationship. I find it agreeable. He's using you to conquer the world, Ash said. He's hunting your kin. He's killing legendaries. And Mewtwo floated closer, hovering inches from Ash's face. Why should I care for Kain I never asked for? Why should I save a world that created me to be a killer? Because you have a choice, Ash shouted. Mewtwo's eyes narrowed. The air pressure in the dome spiked. Choice? I am a clone. My DNA is copyrighted. My thoughts are monitored. I have no choice. I have programming. Then break it, Ash challenged. I cannot, she whispered, a crack of vulnerability showing in her facade. She tapped her temple. There is a limiter. A neural kill switch. If I leave the station, if I disobey a direct combat order, my brain liquefies. Ash stared at her. The horror of it washed over him. She wasn't a partner to Valerius. She was a slave who had been gaslit into loving her chains. I can remove it, Ash said. Mewtwo blinked. You lie. I'm the silver bearer, Ash said. I have the aura of Lugia. The power of the sea. It heals. It binds. It bonds, Mewtwo corrected. I know what you are. You are a collector. You want to add me to your set. To make me your weapon instead of his. No, Ash said firmly. I want to make you free. He reached out his hand. Let me see the limiter. Mewtwo stared at his hand. For a moment, the perfect mask of indifference slipped. She looked like a frightened child. "If you touch my mind," she warned, "and I find deception, I will erase you." "Deal," Ash said. Mewtwo floated down. She bowed her head, presenting the base of her skull where the neural tube connected. Ash placed his hand on her cold, smooth skin. He closed his eyes. The mindscape Ash wasn't in the jungle anymore. He was in a storm of numbers. Mewtwo's mind was a supercomputer of infinite complexity. Equations, battle strategies, and genetic codes flew past him like a hurricane. But in the center of the storm, wrapped around a pulsing purple light, was a collar of black iron. The limiter. It was woven into her synapses. It pulsed with the sovereignty's code: obey, submit, destroy. Ash approached it. The collar flared, sending a shock of pain through his mental projection. "Get out," the collar commanded. No, Ash thought. He summoned the power of the Covenant. 3 avatars appeared beside him in the mindscape. Bianca, glowing with draconic fire. Burn it. Aurora, radiating absolute zero. Freeze it. Kiyomi, flowing like a tidal wave. Wash it away. Together, Ash ordered. He grabbed the collar with his mental hands. It burned him. It tried to rewrite his brain, to make him a slave too. "You are weak," the collar whispered. "You are human." "I am Ash Ketchum," he roared back, "and I don't break." He pulled. The avatars poured their power into him. Fire, ice, water. The elemental triad smashed into the digital iron. The collar cracked. Mewtwo screamed, a sound that shattered glass in the real world. With a final, blinding flash of white light, the collar shattered into dust. Reality Ash was thrown backward, slamming into a tree. He gasped, blood pouring from his nose. Mewtwo was on her knees in the grass. She was clutching her head, panting. The jungle flickered. The holograms died. The sterile steel walls of the station were revealed. But Mewtwo didn't look at the walls. She looked at her hands. "Silent," she whispered. "It's silent." The voice in her head, the constant command to obey, was gone. She looked up at Ash. Her eyes were wide, trembling with tears she didn't know how to shed. You did it. I told you." Ash wiped the blood from his face. "I don't lie." Suddenly, the station rocked violently. Red lights began to flash. "Security breach," a mechanical voice blared. "Acid, Mewtwo, compromise. Initiating station self-destruct. T-minus 60 seconds. "Valerius," Kiyomi snarled. He'd rather destroy the station than let her loose. "We need to go," Bianca yelled, grabbing Ash. "The shuttle is destroyed. How do we get down?" Aurora looked at the glass dome. "We jump? From the stratosphere?" Kiyomi asked. "We'll burn up on re-entry." They all looked at Mewtwo. She stood up. She was trembling, but not from fear, from rage. "He tried to kill me," she said softly. The air around her began to distort. Gravity bent. Debris started to float. "Mewtwo?" Ash asked. She turned to him. "You offered me freedom. I accept." She floated over to him. She didn't ask. She didn't perform a ritual. She grabbed the front of his armor and pulled him into a kiss. It wasn't romantic. It was a transfer of data, the covenant of the void. Ash felt his mind expand. He saw the universe. He understood the math of the stars. He felt the psychic lattice that connected all living things. A 4th mark appeared on the back of his right hand, a violet genetic helix. Mewtwo pulled back. Her eyes were glowing with god-tier power. "Hold on," she commanded. She raised both hands. A bubble of pure psychic energy, thick and impenetrable, formed around the group. Station purge in 3, 2. Mewtwo didn't wait. Psystrike. She blasted a hole through the floor of the station. The bubble dropped out of the glass garden, falling into the cold vacuum of the upper atmosphere. Behind them, the station detonated in a silent, blinding blossom of nuclear fire. They fell. Inside the bubble, it was calm. Outside, the air roared as they re-entered the atmosphere, flames licking the psychic shield. Ash looked at Mewtwo. She was staring out at the burning horizon, watching the curve of the world. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Real fire, real danger." She looked at Ash, a fierce, possessive smile curving her lips. I am Mew, she declared, discarding her slave name, and I am finally awake. Ash smiled back, exhausted but triumphant. Welcome to the real world, Mew. He looked at his hand. 4 marks. 4 queens. They were falling toward the ocean, toward the final battle. But for a moment, suspended between the stars and the sea, Ash felt invincible. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. The storm of origin. The ocean was at war with itself. The Whirl Islands, usually a labyrinth of dangerous currents and hidden reefs, had been transformed into a churning cauldron of violence. The sky was a bruised, apocalyptic violet, choked with smoke from burning oil platforms and the ozone discharge of high-energy weaponry. Ash Ketchum stood on the deck of a stolen Sovereignty destroyer, the Ironwill, which his team had commandeered 2 hours ago. The wind whipped his hair across his face, stinging his eyes, but he didn't blink. He looked out at the horizon, where a massive, swirling vortex of water marked the entrance to the deep chamber, Lugia's resting place. Around the vortex, a fleet of Sovereignty battleships formed a blockade. They were massive, steel leviathans, their guns trained not on each other, but on the ocean itself. They were firing depth charges, sonic pulses designed to crack the tectonic plates and force the sea god to surface. They're trying to deafen him, Kiyomi said, standing at Ash's right. Her katana was drawn, the water aura around it vibrating with agitation. If Lugia surfaces in pain, he will be disoriented. Easy to shackle. Valerius is desperate, Ash said, his voice amplified by the helmet of his tactical suit. He knows we have the 4. He knows his time is running out. He looked at his team. They were ready. Bianca, in her human form but with translucent dragon wings shimmering at her back, checked the readout on a missile launcher she had ripped from a turret. Aurora, hovering a few feet off the deck, was gathering moisture from the humid air, forming icicles the size of ballista bolts. Mew, formerly Mewtwo, sat in a meditative lotus position in the air, her eyes glowing. She was mentally scanning the entire enemy fleet, dissecting their communications. The flagship, Mew announced, her voice projecting directly into their minds. The Sovereign Dawn. Valerius is there. And something else. The corrupted Ho-Oh, Ash finished. Mew nodded. Its mind is broken. It is screaming in binary. Ash gripped the rail of the ship. We end this today. No more running. He turned to his queens. Bianca, take the air. Keep their fighters off us. Aurora, freeze their guns. Kiyomi, breach the hulls. Mew, keep Valerius blind. And you? Aurora asked, her eyes cool but concerned. Ash drew the silver-winged sword. The blade hummed, reacting to the proximity of its master, Lugia. I'm going down the drain, Ash said, pointing to the vortex. I need to wake Lugia up before they crack the planet in half. The battle began with a thunderclap. Mew raised a hand, and the Ironwill's engines surged. The ship didn't just accelerate, it was telekinetically thrown forward, skipping across the waves like a stone. Brace! Ash yelled. The destroyer smashed into the Sovereignty's perimeter line. Metal shrieked as it rammed a frigate, cleaving it in 2. Engage, Ash commanded. Bianca launched herself into the sky. She shifted midair into her full Latias form, a sleek, red and white jet dragon. She broke the sound barrier instantly, weaving through a net of anti-air flak. Mistball. She carpet-bombed the deck of a battleship with spheres of psychic energy. Explosions bloomed like flowers, silent and devastating. Aurora floated over the water. She raised her arms, and the ocean froze. Not just the surface, but deep down. Massive icebergs erupted from the water, skewering 2 submarines that were trying to flank them. Sheer cold. The guns of the nearest battleship froze solid. When the soldiers tried to fire, the barrels shattered. Kiyomi was a blur on the water. She ran across the waves, dodging laser fire. She reached the hull of a carrier, placed her hand on the steel, and pushed. Hydro pump. A pressurized jet of water, thin as a needle, punched through the armor plating. She sliced a hole big enough for a truck, and the ocean rushed in. The carrier began to list immediately. Ash didn't watch. He was running. He sprinted to the bow of his ship. The vortex was right ahead, a miles-wide funnel of water leading down into the abyss. Pikachu, stay with Mew, Ash ordered. Cover me from up here. Pikachu saluted, sparks flying from his cheeks. Ash took a breath. He tapped the silver wing mark on his cheek. "Don't die," Bianca's voice whispered in his head. "Don't be late," Aurora added. "Strike true," Kiyomi urged. "I will hold the sky," Mew promised. Ash jumped. He plummeted into the center of the vortex. The abyss, it was like falling through a washing machine filled with boulders. The pressure was immense. Ash's suit groaned, the aura shielding him flickering under the strain. He dove deeper, using the silver wing sword to cut through the turbulence. Down in the dark, he saw it. The underwater temple of Lugia. It was a massive structure of pearl and coral, glowing with a soft, rhythmic blue light. But the light was flickering. Surrounding the temple were dozens of crab-like submersibles, drilling into the temple walls. They were injecting a black fluid into the water, neurotoxin. "They're poisoning him," Ash realized. He landed on the temple roof. The water here was calm, protected by an ancient barrier, but the barrier was failing. A submersible noticed him. Its floodlights blinded him. A torpedo hissed from its tube. Ash didn't dodge. He swung the sword. The water blade extension sliced the torpedo in half. It detonated, sending a shockwave that slammed Ash against the temple dome. He gritted his teeth, tasting blood. He placed his hand on the temple stone. "Lugia!" he screamed with his mind. "Wake up!" A low, mournful groan answered him. It vibrated through the water, shaking the seafloor. "Too late." The voice was weak, drugged. "The sky has fallen." Ash looked up through the water. Above the surface, the sky had turned gold. The surface Mew felt it first. A tear in reality. "Ash!" she projected, panic lacing her telepathy. "He's here, the Phoenix." From the clouds, a sun descended. But it wasn't the warm, life-giving sun of legend. It was a star of cold, hard fusion. Ho-Oh! The rainbow Pokemon descended, but its feathers were dull gray. Its eyes were replaced with cybernetic red lenses. Heavy cables trailed from its back, connecting it to the flagship Sovereign Dawn. Valerius stood on the deck of the flagship, arms spread wide. "Behold the new god!" he screamed. Sacred fire, converted to plasma. Ho-Oh opened its beak. A beam of white fire shot down. It didn't aim for the ships, it aimed for the vortex. "No!" Bianca shrieked. She dove, trying to intercept the beam. "Bianca, stop!" Mew yelled, throwing a psychic shield up. The beam hit the shield. Mew screamed as the energy feedback nearly fried her brain. The shield shattered. The beam punched through, vaporizing the water, drilling down toward Ash. The abyss, the water boiled. Ash looked up to see a column of pure death rushing toward him. He had a split second. He could run. He could swim away and live. But if he moved, the beam would hit the temple. It would kill Lugia in his sleep. Not today, Ash thought. He sheathed his sword. He stood directly over the central seal of the temple. He spread his arms. He called upon the Covenant. Bianca. Aurora. Kiyomi. Mew. He pulled their power through the bond. Not a trickle, a flood. His body began to glow. Silver. Blue. Violet. The beam hit him. The aftermath, the ocean exploded. A dome of steam 10 miles wide erupted from the sea, obliterating the submersibles, capsizing the sovereignty ships, and knocking Valerius off his feet. For a moment, there was only white, then, silence. The steam began to clear. The vortex was gone. The sea was flat. Floating on the surface, amidst the wreckage of the fleet, was a body. It was Ash. He was face down. His armor was melted. The silver-winged sword was floating beside him, dull and gray. "Ash!" Bianca dove from the sky, hitting the water hard. She shifted to human form, swimming frantically to him. She flipped him over. His face was pale. His chest wasn't moving. The marks on his face, the wing, the feather, the droplet, the helix, were fading. "No," Bianca sobbed, shaking him. "No, no, no, you don't get to do this. You don't get to be the hero and leave." Aurora landed on an ice floe nearby. She stared at the body, her face unreadable, but tears froze on her cheeks. Kiyomi surfaced, climbing onto the ice. She bowed her head, clutching her katana until her knuckles turned white. Mew floated down. She looked at Ash, then at the sky where the corrupted Ho-Oh was circling, preparing for a second shot. He is gone, Mew whispered. The link, it's silent. Valerius's voice boomed from the flagship speakers. And so falls the pretender. The covenant is broken. Surrender, beasts, and I will make your captivity painless. Bianca looked up. Her eyes were red, but they were burning. Broken? She hissed. She placed her hand on Ash's chest. The covenant isn't a contract, she whispered. It's a marriage. She looked at the others. And marriage, Aurora said, stepping onto the water, which froze under her feet, is until death. Or, Kiyomi drew her blade, pointing it at Valerius, beyond it. He isn't dead, Mew realized, her eyes widening. He isn't in his body. She pointed down. He's with her, the spirit plane. Ash was standing on a beach. The sand was made of stars. The ocean was a liquid galaxy. Standing before him was a woman. She was tall, with skin like pearl and hair like the deep current. She wore robes of silver feathers. Lugia. Or rather, the spirit of the sea, Rhea. She looked at him with ancient, sad eyes. You blocked the sun for me, she said. Her voice was the sound of whales singing in the deep. You were sleeping, Ash said. He looked at his hands. They were transparent. Am I dead? You were between, Rhea said. You burned your physical vessel to ash to save mine. A noble exchange. I need to go back, Ash said. My friends, my wives, they're alone. You cannot go back as you were, Rhea said. Your human body is ruined. If you return, you must leave your humanity behind. You must become the Avatar completely. She stepped closer. You will be powerful. You will be immortal. But you will slowly lose the ability to feel like a man. You will become a force of nature. A Silver King in truth, not just in name. Ash looked at the starry ocean. He thought of his mom. He thought of Pallet Town. He thought of Pikachu. Will I remember them? Ash asked. For a few centuries, Rhea said. Eventually, they will become myths to you. Ash closed his eyes. He saw Bianca crying. He saw the fear in Valerius's eyes. If I don't go back, Ash asked, what happens? Valerius wins, Rhea said. He enslaves the world. He shackles the sky. Ash opened his eyes. They were silver. Then there's no choice, Ash said. I'll pay the price. Rhea smiled. It was a sad, proud smile. She opened her arms. Then come to me, my husband, and let us wake the world. Ash stepped into her embrace. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. The Soul Crucible. The world between breaths was silent, but it was not empty. Ash Ketchum stood in the embrace of Rhea, the avatar of Lugia's soul. The starry beach dissolved around them, replaced by a spiraling column of silver light. It felt like ascending from the bottom of the ocean, rising through crushing pressure toward a surface he couldn't see. The transition will hurt, Rhea's voice echoed, not in his ears, but in the vibrating energy that now constituted his existence. You are forcing the infinite into the finite. You are pouring an ocean into a cup. I've had worse, Ash gritted out. He felt his memories burning, flashes of his childhood, the taste of his mother's cooking, the feel of grass under his sneakers, fading at the edges, replaced by the cold, vast knowledge of the tides. He fought to hold on to them. Pikachu. Brock. Misty. The smell of ozone before a thunderbolt. Hold on to the anchor, Rhea whispered. Your humanity is the fuel. If you burn it all now, you will return as a monster. Save a spark. Ash focused on a single image. The four women waiting for him on the surface. Their fear. Their rage. Their love. That's the spark, he thought. The column of light shattered. The surface Bianca was screaming. She wasn't using words anymore. She was screaming in raw psychic energy, waves of violet force battering the deflector shields of the Sovereign Dawn. You killed him, she shrieked, launching herself at the flagship. Bianca, wait, Aurora yelled, trying to catch her, but the Latias avatar was too fast. On the deck of the flagship, Valerius watched the grieving dragon approach with a cold sneer. Predictable, he muttered. Target the girl. Use the phoenix. The corrupted Ho-Oh shrieked, a digital, glitching cry. It turned its head, the red lenses glowing. The plasma fire gathered in its throat. Bianca didn't care. She charged straight into the maw of the beast. Burn, Valerius commanded. Ho-Oh fired. The beam of white plasma lashed out. And stopped. It didn't hit a shield. It didn't hit a wall. It hit a hand. Hovering in the air between Bianca and the death ray was a figure. It was Ash, but it wasn't the Ash who had fallen into the sea. His tactical armor was gone, replaced by a manifestation of his power, a coat woven from pure silver light that flowed like water around him. His hair was white, floating as if he were underwater. His skin was flawless, luminous, etched with glowing tribal markings that pulsed with the heartbeat of the ocean. He held the plasma beam in his bare hand, crushing it like a physical object. "Ash," Bianca whispered, stopping mid-air, her wings fluttering uncertainly. Ash turned his head. His eyes were no longer human. There were no pupils, just pools of swirling, molten silver. "Return to formation," Ash said. His voice was a harmonic chord, his own voice layered with Rhea's ancient timbre. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an absolute command of nature. Bianca felt her body obey before her mind could process it. She drifted back to where Aurora, Kiyomi, and Mew hovered, stunned. Ash turned back to Ho-Oh. "You have forgotten the sky," Ash told the bird. "Let me remind you." He squeezed his hand. The plasma beam shattered into 1,000 sparks of harmless light. Valerius stumbled back, gripping the railing. "Impossible. Readings. The readings are undefined. What is he?" Ash looked at the flagship. He didn't look angry, he looked inevitable. "I am the Covenant," Ash said. He raised the silver-winged sword, which had resurfaced with him. It was transformed now, longer, the blade made of translucent energy that warped the air around it. Aeroblast. He swung the sword. He didn't aim at the ship. He aimed at the ocean below it. The air pressure dropped to 0 in a split second, then, it exploded. A vacuum tunnel of compressed air slammed into the water, creating a displacement wave 300 feet high. The ocean rose up, not to crash, but to hold. The water formed a massive, liquid hand that grabbed the Sovereign Dawn. Steel groaned and buckled. The flagship, a vessel the size of a city block, was lifted out of the water and held suspended in the air by the ocean itself. Valerius fell to the deck, sliding toward the edge. "Ho-Oh! Burn him! Burn him!" The corrupted bird screeched, thrashing against the cables that bound it to the ship. It tried to fly, to attack, but it was terrified. It recognized the scent of the Alpha. Ash floated higher, level with the bird. "You are in pain," Ash observed calmly. "Those cables. They itch, don't they?" He pointed the sword at the bird. "Sever." A beam of silver light sliced through the air with surgical precision. It cut every tether connecting Ho-Oh to the ship, severing the neural link instantly. The bird went limp, falling toward the water. "Catch him," Ash ordered. Bianca and Mew moved instantly. Bianca dove, catching the massive bird on a cushion of psychic energy, while Mew reinforced the lift with telekinesis. They gently lowered the unconscious Ho-Oh to a nearby island. Ash turned his gaze to Valerius, who was dangling from the railing of his crushing ship. "Put me down," Valerius screamed, his composure gone. "I am the Sovereign. I control the Pantheon." "You control nothing," Ash said, drifting closer. "You built toys because you were afraid of the real thing." Ash raised a hand. The water hand holding the ship squeezed tighter. The hull shrieked. Fuel lines ruptured. "Ash, stop," a voice cut through the divine fog in his mind. Ash paused. He looked down. Pikachu was standing on a piece of driftwood, looking up at him. The little mouse looked terrified. Not of the enemy, but of Ash. "That's enough," Pikachu's voice, projected through Mew, pleaded. "You're crushing the crew. The soldiers. They didn't choose this." Ash looked at the ship. He saw the panic of the deckhands. He felt their heartbeats, tiny, frantic rhythms against the vast pulse of the ocean. The Silver King blinked. The silver in his eyes receded slightly, revealing a hint of brown iris. "Right," Ash thought. "I am a protector, not a destroyer." He lowered his hand. The water released the ship. It crashed back into the ocean with a massive splash, bobbing helplessly, its engines dead, its weapons crushed. Ash floated down, landing on the water's surface as if it were concrete. The silver light faded from his coat, leaving him in tattered remnants of his clothes, gasping for air. The divine power receded, leaving him shivering and mortal feeling once more. Bianca hit him like a tackle hug before he could even steady himself. "You idiot!" she sobbed into his neck. "You absolute, colossal idiot!" Aurora was next, placing a freezing hand on his fever-hot forehead. "Your temperature is critical. You burned too hot." Kiyomi knelt on the water, offering him the hilt of her katana in a gesture of supreme submission. "The tide obeyed you. I have never seen such a thing." Miu floated nearby, her eyes scanning him analytically. "His cellular structure is unstable. The bond with Lugia. It's rewriting him. If he uses that much power again, he won't come back, he'll become pure energy." Ash coughed, tasting salt water. He looked at Valerius, who was being dragged onto a lifeboat by his retreating soldiers. "Let him go," Ash wheezed. "For now." "Why?" Kiyomi growled. "I can end him with a thought." "Because," Ash said, looking at the unconscious Ho-Oh on the beach, "we have a patient to heal, and Valerius. He's not the threat anymore. He's just a man who lost his god." The campfire that night, on a small, uninhabited island in the Whirl archipelago, they made camp. It was a strange sight. A human boy, a yellow mouse, and 4 women who were walking natural disasters, sitting around a driftwood fire. Ho-Oh, or rather, the Avatar Phoenix, lay sleeping nearby. She had taken a human form after being healed by Miu and Ash. She looked like a woman in her 30s, with hair like molten gold and robes of ash gray that were slowly turning back to rainbow hues as she recovered. Ash sat staring into the fire. He felt different, hollowed out. "Here," Aurora said, handing him a roasted Magikarp, caught by Kiyomi, cooked by Bianca. "Thanks," Ash mumbled. "You went far away," Aurora said softly, sitting beside him. The air around her was cool, a relief to his burning skin. "When you were in the light, did you see it?" "See what?" "The end," she said. "Immortality is a long, boring road, Ash. Humans aren't meant to see the horizon." "I saw enough," Ash said. He looked at her. "I saw that I don't want to walk it alone." Miu floated over, sitting on his other side. She rested her head on his shoulder. It was an awkward, learned gesture, but it was genuine. "My calculations suggest Valerius will retreat to his mountain fortress in Johto," Miu said. "He will activate the Omega Protocol." "Which is?" Ash asked. "He intends to crash the moon," Miu said casually. "Or rather, use a gravitational tractor beam to pull a meteor down. To restart the planet. A great reset. To wipe out all legendaries and humans, leaving only his sovereignty in bunkers to rebuild." "Of course he is," Ash sighed, rubbing his temples. "Why is it always meteors?" Bianca giggled. It was a wet, teary sound, but it broke the tension. "We have the numbers now," Kiyomi said, sharpening her blade. "Wind, ice, water, psychic, and fire, once the phoenix wakes." Ash looked at the sleeping phoenix. 5 queens, Ash murmured. "And a king," Bianca corrected, leaning into his back. Ash looked at the fire. The silver marks on his face and hands glowed faintly in the dark. "We move at dawn," Ash said. "We finish this, for good." He looked up at the moon. It looked closer than usual. "Get some sleep," he told them. "Tomorrow, we go to war with gravity." Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. The Silver King. The sky over Mount Silver was bleeding. The gravitational tractor beam, a pillar of sickly green light erupting from the peak of the mountain, was tearing the atmosphere apart. Clouds were being sucked upward into the void. The moon loomed terrifyingly large, its craters visible to the naked eye, casting a pale, oppressive light over the battlefield. Ash Ketchum stood at the base of the mountain. The air was thin, tasting of copper and impending doom. Behind him stood the Covenant. Bianca, the Red Aeon, her wings shimmering with psychic heat. Aurora, the Frost Queen, the ground freezing beneath her feet. Kiyomi, the Tide Walker, water condensing from the air around her blade. Miu, the Genetic Genesis, floating in a lotus position, her eyes scanning the multiverse of outcomes. And Phoenix, the Reborn. She stood tall, her golden hair flowing like liquid fire, her eyes burning with the wrath of a deity who had been enslaved. "This is it," Ash said. His voice was calm. The panic of the boy was gone. The resolve of the king remained. "The mountain is hollow," Miu reported, her telepathy linking them all. "Valerius is in the core. The tractor beam is powered by a singularity drive. If we destroy the drive, the beam stops. And if we fail? Bianca asked, her voice trembling slightly. Then the moon falls, Aurora stated coldly, and the Ice Age returns, permanently. Ash drew the silver-winged sword. It didn't hum this time. It sang, a resonant, clear note that cut through the roar of the wind. We don't fail, Ash said. Covenant, advance. The climb, the ascent was a gauntlet. The sovereignty had dug in. The slopes of Mount Silver were fortified with thousands of automated turrets, legions of iron soldiers, and swarms of Entei-class assault mechs. But the sovereignty was fighting an army. They were fighting nature itself. Burn them! Phoenix screamed. She raised her hands, and the sky rained sacred fire. White-hot flames incinerated the bunkers, melting rock into slag. Freeze the path, Ash commanded. Aurora swept her arm forward. An avalanche of ice surged up the mountain, creating a ramp over the burning wreckage. Ash sprinted up the ice, his boots finding purchase instantly. A squad of elite soldiers jet-packed toward him. Kiyomi. The Suicune avatar leapt over Ash's head. She slashed her katana through the air. Hydro Pump manifested as a pressurized blade of water, slicing through the jetpacks. The soldiers spiraled down, crashing into the cliffs. Mew, shield. A massive artillery shell whistled toward them. Mew didn't even look at it. She flicked a finger, and a pink hexagonal barrier appeared. The shell detonated harmlessly. They reached the summit entrance, a massive blast door made of impervium alloy. It's sealed, Bianca said. I can't phase through it, it has psychic dampeners. Ash walked up to the door. He placed his hand on the cold metal. He tapped into the bond. He didn't pull power this time, he pushed it. He channeled the vibration of the ocean floor, the crushing weight of the deep. Earth power. He punched the door. The impact wasn't loud, it was deep. The metal groaned, warped, and then shattered inward, blown off its hinges as if hit by a train. Ash stepped into the darkness. The core, the heart of Mount Silver, was a cavern of machinery. Suspended over a bottomless pit was the Singularity Drive, a spinning ring of black hole energy that roared like a trapped beast. Standing on a catwalk above the drive was Valerius. He looked wretched. His pristine uniform was torn, his eyes wild and bloodshot. He was hooked up to a life support machine that seemed to be feeding him adrenaline directly. You! Valerius shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Ash. Why won't you die? Why won't you just let me save humanity? You're not saving it, Ash's voice boomed, amplified by the acoustics of the cavern. You're afraid of it. You're afraid of chaos, so you want to control everything. But life is chaos, Valerius. Chaos is weakness. Valerius slammed his hand on a console. And I will purge it, engage Protocol 0. The Singularity Drive spun faster. The gravity in the room shifted. Ash felt his feet lift off the floor. Debris started flying upward into the beam. He's destabilizing the core, Mew yelled. He's going to create a black hole right here. It'll swallow the planet before the moon even hits. Stop him, Ash roared. The 5 queens charged. But Valerius had one last trick. Guardian System, activate. From the shadows of the ceiling, something massive dropped down. It was a Rayquaza. But it wasn't real, it was a mech. A god-killer. Class automata, built from the skeletons of dead dragons and powered by a nuclear heart. It roared, a mechanical scream that ruptured eardrums. It slammed into Phoenix, knocking her out of the air. It whipped its tail, smashing Aurora into the wall. It has anti-field generators, Mew cried, clutching her head. It's nullifying our powers, I can't focus. The Mecha Rayquaza loomed over Ash. It opened its maw, charging a hyperbeam of green radiation. Ash looked at his sword. It was vibrating violently. Ash, Ria's voice whispered from the void. You cannot defeat the sky with the sea alone. You must unite the elements. How? Ash thought desperately. The Covenant is a circle, Ria said. Complete it. Ash looked at his fallen wives. Phoenix, burning with rage. Aurora, cold and unyielding. Kiyomi, fluid and adaptive. Mew, the mind of the universe. Bianca, the heart of the dragon. Girls. Ash yelled, staring down the barrel of the hyperbeam. Don't fight individually. Channel it all to me. They understood. They didn't stand up, they reached out. 5 beams of colored light, red, blue, violet, pink, gold, shot from their chests. They hit Ash. The silver god the hyper beam fired. But it didn't hit Ash, it hit a wall of rainbow light. Ash Ketchum stood in the center of the platform, but he wasn't just Ash anymore. He was the prism. His hair was pure white, floating in a zero-gravity halo. His eyes were burning with all 5 colors of the Covenant. His coat had transformed into a suit of armor made of crystallized aura, wings of fire and ice sprouting from his back, a tail of water and psychic energy swirling around him. He caught the hyperbeam in his hand. Is that all? The voice was a legion. Ash crushed the energy beam. He flew upward. He moved so fast he teleported. He appeared in front of the Mecha Rayquaza, Punishment. He punched the mech in the face. The impact shattered the sound barrier. The mech's head exploded in a shower of gears and oil. The massive machine crumpled, falling into the pit below. Ash turned to Valerius. Valerius backed away, terror finally breaking his mind. What are you? Ash landed on the catwalk. The wings of light faded, but the aura remained, heavy, crushing, divine. I am the choice you refused to make, Ash said. He looked at the singularity drive. It was critical, it couldn't be stopped. Mew, Ash said calmly. Can you teleport the drive? Mew floated up, weak but smiling. To where? The sun, Ash said. Mew's eyes widened. That range. I'd need a boost. Ash offered his hand. Take it. Mew grabbed his hand. The other 4, Bianca, Aurora, Kiyomi, Phoenix, joined them, forming a circle around the drive. Together, Ash whispered. Teleport. The room warped, space folded. With a pop of displaced air, the singularity drive vanished. 8 minutes later, the sun flared slightly brighter in the sky. The end of the war. The silence on Mount Silver was absolute. Valerius was on his knees, weeping. He had lost everything. His army, his god, his weapon. Ash walked over to him. He didn't draw his sword. He didn't use his powers. He simply stood there. It's over, Ash said. Kill me, Valerius whispered. Finish it. No, Ash said. That's the old way. That's your way. He turned to Lance and the G-men, who were finally arriving in helicopters to secure the mountain. Take him, Ash told the champion of Johto. Put him in a cell. Let him watch the world not end. That's his punishment. Lance nodded, looking at Ash with a mixture of awe and fear. Ash, you've changed. Ash touched the silver marks on his face. They were permanent now, scars of divinity. Yeah, Ash said, looking at his 5 partners. I guess I grew up. Epilogue. The Council of Silver 6 months later. The Palace of Alto Mare had been rebuilt. It was no longer a ruin, but a sanctuary. Ash stood on the balcony, looking out over the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the water in hues of gold and violet. He wasn't wearing armor. He wore simple robes of white and blue. The silver-winged sword hung on the wall inside, retired but ready. Thinking again. Bianca wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. Just listening, Ash said, leaning back into her warmth. The ocean is quiet today. It's happy, Kiyomi said, stepping out onto the balcony with a tray of tea. The currents are pure. The global temperature has stabilized, Aurora added, drifting out with a book of poetry in her hand. Though I still prefer the winters. Boring, Phoenix yawned, stretching her arms. She was perched on the railing like a bird. When's the next crisis? I'm itching for a fight. No crises, Mew said, floating out with Pikachu on her lap. My probability algorithms predict a 99% chance of peace for the next decade. Pika Pika. Pikachu cheered, grabbing a cookie from the tray. Ash looked at them. They were powerful. They were dangerous. They were gods. But they were also a family. He wasn't just a Pokemon master anymore. He wasn't just a chosen one. He was the anchor that held the divine to the earth. Ash smiled. He took Bianca's hand, pulled Kiyomi closer, and looked at the horizon. Peace sounds good, Ash said. But if the storm comes back? His eyes flashed silver for a heartbeat. We'll be ready. The end.